Congratulations now. And the boss. You see that? Huh? That's just the beginning of the come. Oh, yeah. That's just the beginning of the come. You see that performance class, that's just the beginning of the school. Mature budget. Joyce
Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the Public Tribune, TV viewers and members of the media. Welcome to the Central Committee meeting number 28 of today, Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2014. A special welcome is extended as well to the Minister of Justice, the Honorable Mr. Dennis Richardson, and the support staff, Mrs. Lisha Stella, Mr. Jusia, and Mr. Coffey. We have established a quorum to continue with this meeting. Please stand for a moment of silence. We have received notices of absence from the following members: MP Mr. Romain Laville, and notice that MP Dr. Lloyd Richardson will be joining this meeting at a later stage. Are there any other notices? MP Mr. Josh Wonderford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to the Chair, my colleagues, of course, the media, those that are viewing and listening. Mr. Member of Parliament Louis Labesh will not be attending this morning, and Member of Parliament Mr. William Marlin is on his way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Mr. George Pontifex. Any other notices at this point? None? Thank you. I would just like to make use of this opportunity to spread the word with regards to the commemoration of World Book and Copyright Day. As a reader, volunteer reader myself to students of Sister Bertha School for many years, it is important to encourage the art and the love of reading to our youth, to our students and to our kids. It's important for our nation that our students read more and chat less in general. Thank you very much. I would like to also inform the meeting as a point of order that we are not being aired at this point in time by the cable TV due to the fact that the weekly Council of Ministers meeting, press briefing, will be taking place right now, I guess around 10 o'clock, but we will be on air again around 11:15. However, please take note that the meeting can be followed via radio, via Pearl FM radio, or via the Parliament's website, which is www.xxmparliament.org. The agenda point for the Central Committee meeting, again, is the draft national ordinance to amend the national ordinance for the reporting of unusual transactions in connection with the proposed membership of the Egmont Group. Het staat in Dutch as well. Het ontwerp van de landsverordening tot wijziging van de landsverordening melding ongebruikelijke transacties in verband met de voorgenomen toetreding tot de Egmont Group. Parliament received the draft national ordinance to amend this ordinance reporting unusual transaction in connection with the proposed membership to the group, Egmont Group, as stated before. All members of Parliament received this draft law electronically on April the 15th, in the same way that it was received, sent by the Ministry to Parliament. Just in brief, the purpose of this ordinance, this draft ordinance, is to amend the present ordinance reporting unusual transactions. And the intention is to amend the old or the present draft ordinance in order to meet the requirements and the criteria set by the Egmont Group. If St. Maarten is to become a member of this organization, we have to amend this draft law. And just briefly, becoming a member to the Egmont Group has the advantage of St. Maarten being considered internationally as a reliable jurisdiction, and also to lower the risk of St. Maarten being isolated as a country in the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing. This will and hopefully can be minimalized by St. Maarten participating and becoming a member to the Egmont Group. I will leave the rest of the explanation up to the Minister, what the benefits are of this law and why it is important for us to deal with this law by Parliament as soon as possible. Thank you, Minister Dennis Richardson, Minister of Justice. I give you first the floor to give an explanation about this draft law, and after that, the members of Parliament will have the opportunity to ask questions or do their concerns. No, this is the Central Committee meeting. You may sit. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to each and every member of the Parliament of St. Maarten. And I would like to also acknowledge my support staff here this morning, giving me elucidations that might be further necessary. The Financial Information Unit, as you all know, Melbourne Open One Transactions, is an important organization that each country has to have in view of combating money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities through the world. And each self-respecting country that wants to be accepted by the international community has to ensure that there's an organization that can function independently as far as this is concerned. The organization reports on unusual transactions, but not all unusual transactions are suspect. Suspected transactions are then reported by the institution to the public prosecutor's office for further investigation where necessary. That also means that although it might analyze based on analysis signal that there is an unusual transaction organization, all unusual transactions does not necessarily have to be of a nefarious nature. So in that regard, the organization collects a lot of that data, important data as well, but that data also has to be protected because, as I've said, the simple fact that a transaction has been unusual does not signify that something is wrong. When St. Maarten became a country, Curaçao automatically qualified for many of the organizations in the world to be part of that, so as the ATF and the Egmont Group. That did not happen with St. Maarten, and as a result, the laws of St. Maarten were subjected to review for the country to become part of the Egmont Group, for the organization of the country to become part of the Egmont Group. And as a result of that review of the Egmont Group, a number of changes are necessary to the law that we adapted from the Netherlands and Wales. Those changes are presented here to you this morning. The most important changes is that, let me say, the elimination of the Raad voor de Kansspelen. We don't have such a council. It was never instituted in the Netherlands and Wales as well, and has proven to have no real function. So that council has been eliminated from the law. Also, the role of the Minister of Finance has been brought back to practically zero, as the experience has also shown that the organization operates more in the area of law enforcement than in financial services of that area. It's not the task of the MAARTEN. The committee that was projected to accompany and guide the MAARTEN has also been eliminated, as it did not function in the Netherlands until an experienced elders has also shown that it does not function. Also, it is important that we eliminate from the law that anyone who wants could have information from the registers of the MAARTEN. It is our opinion that only individual persons should be able to get information about themselves, and not that any and everyone can get into the registry and ask information for whatever purpose. So the idea is that aspect will be regulated when we change the law on the exchange of information on persons that protects the person's rights. Furthermore, some of the tasks of the MAARTEN have been clarified. A few tasks have been added. The country coordinatorship in this regard has been added to the tasks of the MAARTEN, and the independent operation of the MAARTEN is furthermore formulated explicitly in the law. Those are some of the changes. A lot of them are technical of nature in regards to the functioning of the law. But first and foremost, we would like to comply with the request of the Egmont Group, so that we, as a country, can be part of that organization as well, and therefore taken up into the countries that has a good legal structure and organization for combating the financing of terrorism and money laundering. I hope with your clarification, Madam Chair, and the few words I've added to it, that that would be sufficient for the members, but actually the members of Parliament can pose further questions. I would like your permission to ask the Director of the MAARTEN, Mr. Steller, to clarify the importance of being part of the Egmont Group.
Thank you, Minister of Justice, Mr. Dennis Richardson. Mr. Steller has the floor.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I will briefly give elucidation on the reason why it is of importance for St. MAARTEN to become a member of the Egmont Group. The Egmont Group, at this moment consisting of 140 FIUs worldwide, is the entity that encourages the development of autonomous FIUs. St. Martin's FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, is an administrative FIU. Having said that, there consists three sorts of FIUs. You have the administrative FIU, a government entity that receives unusual transactions. You have hybrid, next to that you have hybrid FIUs. Those are FIUs to which the police has access to the suspicious transactions. And the third form is the police FIU, where the police is the one managing the register of suspicious transactions. The FIU St. Maarten, in the time of the Netherlands Antilles, had in its law from 1996 the Minister of Finance who was the in Dutch beheerder of the Register of Unusual Transactions. With the birth of the Egmont Group and the deepening of the Financial Action Task Force recommendations, it was advised on an international level that the FIUs handle their unusual transaction registry themselves. They do not want outside influence, specifically for the reason, in our case as being an administrative FIU, that they are unusual transactions, meaning that give or take maybe 3/4 of the transactions are just that, unusual. The FIU is tasked with analyzing these, gathering information about these transactions of the subjects who come forth in the registry, and give a final report. If there is nothing further than it being an unusual transaction, then it remains in the registry, and after the legal period of time, it is destroyed, that information. If it is a suspicious transaction after analysis, if that is the conclusion, then it's put forward to the public prosecutor's office. In the world at this moment, in different countries, there are still police-managed registers. The Egmont Group is a proponent of the register being managed by the FIU itself, and if deemed necessary, if it's become clear, if it's clearly the case that a subject is under investigation, then that information is given to the law enforcement authorities. If the law enforcement authorities do not have sufficient information for the FIU that there is an investigation ongoing, then the information remains with the FIU. Those are the guidelines and strict rules that the Egmont Group of FIUs puts forward to its members. At this moment, it's very, it has almost become mandatory to be a member of the Egmont Group, to be able to participate in training, to be able to get the information that is necessary to know how, on an international level, to exchange information. For example, if they notice that the FIU, for whatever reason, information is getting outside of the FIU without it being safeguarded, then that FIU is severely reprimanded and can be expelled from the Egmont Group. So it's not only a case of becoming a member just to be a member, but you have, you have mandatory trainings and enhancement and update of registry information that you have to participate on. You have a secure website that information is being exchanged on based on strict rules and guidelines of the Egmont Group. And once, if you look at the CFATF, the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, of which St. Maarten became a member in 2011, you see that these two organizations work hand in hand in enhancing not only the FIU's operations, but also the country's standard worldwide in combating money laundering and terrorist financing. To speak briefly about terrorist financing, that is an area that St. Maarten FIU respect is not, is developing on, learning how to see to it that terrorist financing is properly combated. The law has been changed on that, the penal code, and the law, the ordinance on the reporting of unusual transactions is also being enhanced in that field. So, Madam Chair, I would like to leave it with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Licia Stella, for the additional explanation. Minister, anyone else from your team would like to add anything before? No?
Just Madam Chair, the observation that the ECMO Group is a non-political organization of the top professionals in the financial information major unit. It has approximately 140 members, and the idea is naturally to, through the international connection, to help combat more effectively money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities. And I think with that we have been able to give some insight into the purpose and operations of the group. Just would like to add that our unit has 9 persons working for it at this moment. It is the formation is supposed to be 16. The level of education that is demanded of persons working in the unit is high, given the nature of the work that is done there, the analysis that have to take place in that regard. And also that I can add that with the establishing of the penal code for St. Maarten, we've also complied with a number of recommendations and requirements that the CFATF has had for St. Maarten to be able to not be blacklisted, as it were, in the future. So we are moving ahead steadily and surely in complying with the demands, international demands in this respect as a country.
Thank you, Minister of Justice, Mr. Dennis Richardson. The first speaker is MP Mr. Petrus Leroy Louise.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a good morning to the Minister and his support staff. It sounds very simple and non-aligned when I hear the Minister in a very few words and Licia Stella bring to the forefront what we're dealing with here this morning. My first reaction when I saw the agenda item, I called the griffier right away and I asked some relevant documents which I thought that should have been a party to this presentation here this morning. One is I think that we had, or what is needed is a proper overview of the Egmont Group, but also coming out of the Egmont Group, why this actually came about. And it has to do with the contents of the report that was put together by the Caribbean Financial Task Force. I think it was done on January 8, 2013, Anti-Money Laundering and Combating Financing Terrorism. I think this is a report that the members of Parliament should be privy to. They should understand the contents of what's in there and understand the shortcomings, what is been referred to in here, in the Penal Code, more specifically Article 35 of our Penal Code. And I understand very quickly what we're trying to do is to adjust our present penal code and bring this MAARTEN unit as we have it in conformance with international standards. But as we go there, I would want to ask, seeing the criteria that is required for the Egmont Group, first of all, if they can identify for me the 2 members that have put St. Maarten forward to be a member, because I understand that part of the application process is precisely that it has to be recommended by at least 2 existing members. I would also like to know from the ministry, where are we in terms of the membership application? Are we a short-term candidate, a medium-term candidate, or long-term candidate? Meaning it's saying that we would be able to accomplish these requirements in line with the Egmont Group in a 2-year, a 3-year, or 4-year period. I know we're just embarking on it and we're filling some gaps. So if I can know exactly where we are in that and how long it'll take before we are in full compliance. Also in the report is mentioned that prior to 10-10-10, the month of the Netherlands Antilles produced annual reports. Since 10-10-10, St. Maarten becoming a self-governing entity, no annual reports have been produced for 2011, 2012, and 2013. I would like to know, today, 2014, if any reports have been so far been produced by this body of the MAARTEN, which is the, as we call it, the Financial Intelligence Unit. So those are my quick observations. I mean, you know, we're going to change things, and also I had to ask the fear. When we're making changes, I would always have loved to have a copy of what we're changing next to it, so we can define it properly. I mean, this referred to certain aspects, this word, that, and you know, things we're going to change. It's always good if we can just. I don't want to go through to be tedious, and that's why we have a central committee, so we can handle these things now and then move forward, hammerstick, and get it done. Important also is the independence functioning. As the minister earlier mentioned, this fell under the finance department, and then more and more it became an issue that it should be actually a judicial matter. But also in there is mentioned that it should function independently, and one of the questions became, how are we going to fund it independently and through what resources if it goes into the general budget of the Ministry of Finance, which ultimately means some political implication is required. So what is the plan to move this into a totally independent environment where then, so to speak, no political responsibility or no political interference could be possible? So far, yeah, that of course, yeah, I mean, I'm talking about the entire budget that we now have, including the 9 members that you have. If this unit is truly going to function as a financial intelligence unit in conformance with the requirements of Egmont Group, means that, you know, we have to have a totally separate body and finance, obviously, independently. So far, my observations for now, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Mr. Petrus Roy Weaver. Any other speakers at this time? MP Mr. Roy Martin.
Just one remark, Madam Chair, lady. In de memorie van toelichting, they talk about the Egmont Group gestelde eisen en voorwaarden. While it's been mentioned here also, I would like to see what those gestelde eisen en voorwaarden were. I went to the internet to look, but I haven't found nothing, so if we can get a copy of those gestelde eisen en voorwaarden, would be appreciated.
Thank you, MP Mr. Roy Martin. Any other member at this time? MP Mr. George Fontaine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also thank the Minister, of course, and his cabinet for the explanation and some of the remarks that have been made. Madam Chair, my colleague MP they were touching a very important aspect, which I've often wondered why. When we are dealing with particular documents and ordinances, I think it's always good that what I did on my own was to look at different articles and go back and forth, pull up and so on. But I still think it is good that when we have to do this, that at least what really exists, that we can get you know, a hard copy of such. I've always maintained one thing: we are becoming a country. I always say we are becoming a country, and this brings with it also responsibilities that we have to adhere to. One of the questions that I had was actually who's Egmont Group, and I believe the head of the MAARTEN give us an explanation with regards to what it all entails. What I would like to know is how much success have they had with regards to this group, because we know that when it comes to dealing with money laundering, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars, or pounds, or euros, or guilders, and you need to know exactly that. Yes, we are becoming part of an organization. Yes, it is nice to tell us if we don't, we can be black marketed or whatever, but we still need to know exactly how good is it function, how is their success rate. The last, I think they were started in 1995, we're now 2014. Are there any reports from the state exactly how they're progressing besides being 140 now part of the group? How are they functional? How much success are they having since their establishment? Also, Madam Chair, in explanatory notes, I noticed where they mentioned financial paragraph, an amount estimated at 42,840 guilders. Now, I think they're talking about an annual contribution. Not sure exactly what the amount is. Are there any other contribution that St. Mark will have to make as being part of the Egmont Group? This is very important because, of course, we know our budget constraints. Also, Madam Chair, if I understood it correctly, the head of the MOT is the one who will be tasked right now to give out information back and forth between the organization. I want to make sure of that, which means that I would think that the head has already been screened by the National Security Department because this part of this responsibility is one that can have some awesome consequences, and I need to know exactly. Well, I know for sure that that's what took place, but I need to know for sure that they are the ones who will be responsible for the share of information between the Egmont Group and their department. Madam Chair, I think I'll leave it there for now. There's some other remarks that I have, but I'll leave it for later. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Mr. George Pontefract. Any other MP at this point in time? MP Joe James and MP Mr. Leon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, good morning to the Minister and his team and those listening. The fact that we have now, since we no longer have the constellation as we knew it as the former entities, the St. Martin now taking on this responsibility. If the Minister can tell us, as in terms of the establishing of the local MUT in St. Martin, in terms of, in the absence of reporting, as was done during the former entities, the effective date when we started working with MUT on St. Martin, effective date, as well as when it comes to and pertains to the unusual transaction. Obviously, the fact that it's unusual is based on the fact that it's the frequency and or is based on the fact of the unusual amount that triggers the information from the institutions, be it banks, be it casinos, and so on and so on. So, and or the institutions just need to be reporting based on a certain amount. So if that can be cleared based on the frequency and or based on the amount where these institutions must report the amount. Obviously, we know that in this day and age where terrorism and using money for bad purposes, we see this as an entity that could be used properly to combat financial fraud and so on. So we look forward to the responses providing to us, as well as once we go forward and adapt the changes, that we make sure that it's going to continue to be working where the independence of it is what it is, and as far as the influence, that is not no one way or the other affected. So I will leave it there for now, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Mr. Joe James. MP Mr. Johan Leonard.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and a pleasant good morning to the Minister of Justice and Dr. Oli Estella and the other members, Mr. Coffey and Mr. Busi. I will be very brief in this situation, as you know, I have some concerns because we have been looking at certain questions here, and one of the questions comes up: if this was such an important issue, why it took so long for now that we are going into the market, making it a local? If I'm looking at it, once you become a country, these are certain things that we have to control here on the island. Our local money has now has come to session, and there's a lot of motivation due to the fact that it's also in May there would be a meeting in the Caribbean, and that's why we have to be part. But why it took so long? Maybe there's a good reason, maybe the documentation, the Raad but I'm seeing that the Raad did a very fast job in giving their advice. So I'm not seeing for the Raad. So I want to know why is the reason, but that's not a big issue. My issue is also the staffing is about 9 persons and it has to reach at 16. Do we have members of this community of St. Martin, or people of St. Martin, readily available to sit into these jobs? That they pass the course? Are they waiting? I have received other numbers that of persons that have passed some tests and are waiting how long it would take, when they would be start to work. Those are the things, and the documentations that are going to be destroyed, how long it takes before you destroy them, how much the period. I didn't get that good. There's some other concerns, but at this time, I will remain only to those questions for the time being. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Mr. Johan Leonard. MP Mr. Sylvia, MP Mr. Franz Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a warm welcome to the Minister and his support staff, to my colleagues, radio listeners. Madam Chair, just a brief question, and this is to the Minister of Justice and the head of MAARTEN. One of my major concerns that I have, that is, I realize it is going to start really plaguing St. Martin where the MAARTEN is concerned, with its functioning, has to do with the issue with banks not allowing, let's say, certain type businesses bank with them. We're hearing the casinos, number games, while government itself issues these licenses, but banks are refusing to do business with them. Wouldn't this have a major impact for the functioning of the MAARTEN on St. Martin? Because this is a serious issue that we are facing, and I have plans on calling the central bank into Parliament, because they too have to give account to Parliament on the issue of, while we as a country, St. Martin, and also as government issuing business operating licenses, these institutions who get a license from St. Martin now as country, using their way of stating that certain businesses that we operate on this island does not have the privilege of doing business with some of these banking institutions. I believe if you come here to do business as a bank and government give business licenses to operate, you should respect that just like how you got a license. If you don't want to operate on St. Martin with those institutions, then honestly, I think you should pack up your bank and go to another country where it will favor your way of doing business than here. Unless government said they no longer want to see casinos, gaming industry, and all of these different type of institutions, then fine, I could understand that. But when you have banks telling these institutions they no longer can bank with them, we having a serious problem on the MAARTEN functioning of reporting what is happening on this island on an overall picture. So I believe even the MAARTEN is losing information, while banks are telling these institutions they can't bank with them because of certain issues. And I'm saying that is where we have the different high organs steps in to check, to regulate, to see that these things is functioning properly. So Madam Chair, I would like to hear from the Minister of Justice, how do we move forward on that issue in order for MAARTEN to be functioning the proper way on this island with all the other different businesses that we allow to operate on this island? I thank you.
Thank you, MP Mr. Franz Richardson. MP Mr. Sylvia Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A welcome and a hearty good morning to the Minister and his staff. Madam President, my question to the Minister is in reference with the establishment of membership working within the MAARTEN, and I also realize that it's mandatory to be a member of the Egmont group. But there are questions that I also have, as opposed to my colleague before me. I needed to get an explanation simply because of our banking institutions and our governmental way of issuing licenses. What is the difference, or can the minister explain? We know we have suspicious transactions. We also have unusual transactions. And my question is, can we get a more elaborate explanation about unusual transactions simply because of our banking system, as well as the input of our central bank? I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, MP Mr. Sylvia Olibachimaya. No other speakers? No other speakers at this point in time. Before I give the floor to the Minister of Justice to reply to the questions and concerns expressed by the MPs, I would like to give a friendly reminder that the current law is on the government's website, which is www.MAARTEN, spelled SINTMAARTEN.org. So members
camera.
clicking.
This
is the first time telling me about it.
And the public
You know already.
can
Yeah, keep blocking my camera. Keep blocking my camera.
Okay. So this is
I already got the virus away. You're blocking the camera.
I'm being disturbed now in handling this meeting. Please. So again, as I stated, the present law is on the government website, www.SINTMAARTEN.org. And I look towards the minister. Minister, do you need any time to reply?
We will continue.
You can continue and go into answering immediately. Yes, then we will continue immediately. Minister, you have the floor.
I will follow the speakers and try to address as much as possible the questions that have been posed. There where I might lack some detailed information, the support staff will assist me further. The sponsors of St. Martin to become a member of the Egmont Group are ROUMOU and Tortola. The period that we have available to comply with the demands and conditions is until the 2nd of June of this year. Sorry? Sorry, I say the 2nd of June, I'm corrected, it's the 2nd of May, which is past already. No, nearly, sorry. The question how to enhance the more independent functioning of the MAARTEN will be addressed in a later stage. We chose to, in first instance, meet the demands and requirements of the Egmont Group and those of the CFAPF, and then to look at the more independent functioning of the organization for the future. There are different alternatives for the future as far as that is concerned. You could think of a ZBO, as a Zelfstandig Organisatie, as a possibility. But in our system, in our constitutional system, even the courts depend on government making the monies available, and somebody has to be responsible for whether independent organizations function sufficiently or not. In our system, that means that the minister, whose area it concerns, is responsible for the adequate utilization of the different independent organizations of government and making the funds available and making the whatever is necessary for them to function properly in time, and that we can't escape that responsibility. I would not know how to organize that within the system of constitution that we have. Although we could come up with some creative ideas, but it would fall outside of our normal constitutional way of operating in which a minister is responsible, even for an independent function of an independent organization. But that does not necessarily mean that the minister can meddle in what the organization is doing. For instance, we have, like I said, the courts. We see to it that the money is made available so that courts can function independently. We see to it that members of the court are appointed. We follow procedures in that regard that try to guarantee as much as possible that it not become a party or whatever political issue. But once a court has made its decision, we cannot meddle in it as neither as Parliament nor as a minister. In that regard, and that is the system that we have, and what will be functioning under the same principle. However, the organization itself could be put even at a further distance from government, like we have government-owned companies that have been put at a further distance from government by giving it a separate legal structure. Well, we will look at that for the future. But as the present head of the MAARTEN has said already, there are even countries in which the organization in itself is included in the police organization, and that is less really in the independent that we have been discussing until now. Concerning the original law, the chair has already pointed out that the law in itself is on the website. And yes, the CF-ATF report, if the members of Parliament would appreciate receiving that report, we would gladly see to it that you receive it. And we could send that later. I believe it is also digitally available. We could see to it that it is made available to the members of Parliament. Annual reports. No, there have been no annual reports until now. Like many of the organizations in the justice sector, with the demise of the Netherlands until we were confronted with a situation in which it was practically nothing. If I remember correctly, in those days, all there was of a MAARTEN was a rented building with a number of computers in that building and one administrative person. And then that was the existence of MAARTEN when we began. And since then, we've been busy with the building of the organization, getting people into it, having people trained to be able to carry out the work. All those activities cost time, and that means that as we are still busy with the construction of the MAARTEN, no annual reports could be made. But over what has been done in that period since then, the director of the MAARTEN has promised that she will make a report so that the government as well as Parliament can get insight on all activities that have been deployed in that period to come to the situation that we are at today. The importance of the Egmont Group is the fact that it offers a platform for the exchange of information. It offers a platform for training, which naturally our organization, as a young organization, is heavily in need of. And it offers a platform for the exchange of experiences and the building of knowledge in combating these types of criminal activities. And to play into that, in one of the reports of the group itself, it is stated here. I won't read the whole report, but an investigation in Colombia, with support of the group, detected financial product and assets to the value of $790 million, which involved 309 people and 88 companies and corporations in the concerned criminal enterprise. The collaboration between the organization and specialized money laundering and asset forfeiture prosecutors working in the Attorney General office has resulted in the freezing of $528 million worth of assets. These assets derive from 210 properties, 25 societies, and 20 commercial establishments. So the work that is done in collaboration with each other is tremendous in combating crime. The case involved a drug trafficking organization linked to various illegal armed groups, which are either under investigation or prosecution, are subject to asset forfeiture procedures under the direction of the Colombian Attorney General's office. Just an example of what this kind of cooperation kinds of delivers. The demands and conditions, Member of Parliament Roy Martin, Madam Chair, requested that we can see to it that that report of the ATF can be delivered as well to the members of Parliament. We will try to do so prior to the meeting on Friday that we're supposed to have to decide on the amendments. Member of Parliament, Madam Chair, asked how much success the Ekman Group has. Well, I just paraphrase a report that it kind of illustrates the success factors that the cooperation of these approximately 140 organizations have had in the past and probably will have in the future as well. The membership of the CFTF costs about 63,000 guilders a year, and the membership of the Ekman Group about 48,000 guilders a year, and those fees are taken up into the budget of the ministry so that we can comply with this in this regard. The question as to whether the head of the MOT has been cleared, if the security clearance has received, the answer to that is yes. I believe she's at this moment the only one who has been completely cleared in the security clearance of the Internal Security Office. Member of Parliament Julian's asked when was the effective date started. Well, as I've said, we started out 10-10-10 with 0 possibilities and have since been building on the organization, on the difficult financial circumstances, which I don't have to explain to you. I know that better than even better than I do. But it doesn't mean that nothing has happened. There has been reporting in the past since 2012. They have been reporting on unusual transactions. And in the meantime, we have still continue to build on the organization. The continuity in that sense is guaranteed because of the organization itself has been established in the Landsverordening overhead, so the formation and all those aspects have been established and regulated. Our problem is naturally the implementation, and the implementation problems are two nature. One, finding the necessary knowledge and capacity to fill the organization, and two, naturally having sufficient finances to be able to do so. But it is a gradual improvement. I've said from 0 to 9 in that relatively short period of time is good, and I foresee that organization will grow with at least about 5 in the coming year. Member of Parliament, Mr. Leonard, asked why it took so long to get to this point. Well, as I've just explained, one of the reasons naturally is the fact that we have to start from 0. The other reasons also that there were other conditions that have to be met that needed a higher priority. For instance, the adaptations to our penal code are important conditions that have to be met, and as you know, that was part of a major process of a complete review of the penal code of St. Martin. Those things have to be worked on first. And at the same time, the relationships with the other organizations have to be built. So there's a complex of factors that have contributed to the fact that we have reached this point, and we hope that we can move forward with the necessary speed to complete it in time for our accreditation, as I would call it, to the Ekman Group and the CFATF. On the question of Member of Parliament Franz Richardson concerning the banks, well, banks have to report to the organization itself, but also casinos itself have to report to the organization as far as unusual transactions is concerned, as has been defined by us. So we get information directly from the casinos itself, and naturally, whatever transactions that are considered unusual by these institutions with the banks, we also get. The problem that you mentioned, as far as I know, does not concern our casinos, but a specific casino institution or group is concerned. And if the banks themselves have certain obligations where it concerns dealing with organizations that are considered suspect international. I don't know the exact details of that at this moment, but if you want me to find out, I will try to do so before the meeting on Friday, as to find out what exactly and based on what rules the banks in this specific case have decided that they were justified in not dealing with the institution. Your observation that the bank should respect the fact that the government has issued business permits for these institutions, well, that could be the case, but it is also so that we really do not vet all the organizations that get a business license as to their background. That is in the first instance. That is something new that is coming about at the moment, in which the directors have to, for instance, submit verklaring omtrent gedrag, what they call a police record in popular terms. But naturally, these things go much further. These organizations could have organizations behind them, and then organizations behind them as well. Secondly, it could be that one starts out good, but ends up on the wrong side of the track as well. So all of these things can come into play when it concerns doing business. And I believe the banks today have special responsibilities as far as dealing with money laundering is concerned and other criminal activities. So that could be the reason why the banks might, in their opinion, justifiably decline doing business. Naturally, the institution that is blocked from doing business with a bank in itself can go to courts and demand rectification if they feel that they are unjustifiably being targeted. Then Member of Parliament Myers would like to have some explanation about unusual transactions, and another member also asked about that. Member of Parliament Jules James asked whether the amount or the frequency is the factors for triggering reporting. Both can trigger a reporting on an unusual transaction. I believe the limit is 10,000 guilders. 20,000 guilders, but naturally, if you continue to pay 19,000, let's say every week or every day or whatever, so that you, in your opinion, just fall under the radar, you will still get targeted simply because it will also be seen as an unusual situation. I would now like to turn to the head of the unit and ask if she could give any additional information for the members. For unusual transactions, on unusual transactions.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. Stella.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The unusual transactions are established in two parts, and they are established by indicators which have been established by the minister by ministerial decree. The indicators are for the unusual transactions, the objective indicators, that is 20,000 guilders or higher. If a transaction is of 20,000 guilders and higher, then the reporting institution reports it as under an objective indicator. If they find that the unusual transaction is suspicious, then it's reported by the institution as a suspicious transaction, which is more of a subjective nature. So I find that, for example, the person standing in front of me is nervous or if in the background there are more people watching the moves of the client standing by the teller at the bank. So it's an issue of the teller being very vigilant to see what is going on. If the person is standing in front of him, if they are relaxed, if they come every week with an amount below the 20,000, then it's a suspicious transaction for the teller, who is the first one who meets with a client and who has to make, who has to see that the compliance officer, who is the one reporting to the MOD, gets all the information concerning that client standing in front of him or her. So that's basically what the unusual transaction is about. So these are indicators that all the reporting institutions must know about. And that is why in those indicators, objective and subjective indicators are established by ministerial decree. The compliance officer, each institution has a compliance officer, and that compliance officer has to report the unusual transaction. In Dutch it's called onverwijld. So that is immediately. But what is immediately? It could be, someone could say, oh, within a week is enough. But we have established that the moment the compliance officer receives the information, establishes, hey, this is an unusual report, an unusual transaction, then they have 48 hours to report it to the MOD. If the unusual transaction is deemed of a suspicious nature, then they get 5 days to report to the MOD, because they have to gather more information on it. If they say, hey, let me talk to the teller, or let me see what is the profile of the client. If they need more time to establish the suspicious nature of the transaction, then they get 5 days. And if they need more, then they just let the MOD know, and will need more time. For example, if it's an international client, they need information from abroad, then they can request us for more time, and then they are allotted that time. By law, it's now 5 years. 5 years before unusual transaction from the day can be must be destroyed.
Thank you, Ms. Lichtenstein, for the additional information. Anyone else from your support team, Minister?
Sorry, Madam Chair. No, I think that we've covered all the questions. If we have forgotten, I'm quite sure the members will remind me.
Thank you, Minister Dennis Richardson. Yes, we start back with MP Mr. Petros Leroy Weaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In wrapping up, Madam Chair, I would like to, first of all, thank the Minister. I think you're doing a tremendous job. I don't know how long this sat on anyone's desk, but you're absolutely moving in the right directions. I've made it my absolute requirement to bring myself up to speed with, what's going on in the financial world in terms of us making sure that we're in full compliance internationally. So I have to congratulate you. I think it's excellent work. You've got an excellent staff moving in the right direction. I only have one last question, seeing that we're talking here now about a deadline of next week, May 2nd. The outreach working group of the Edgemont Group basically says that they will decide when the on-site visit will take place. They will conduct the visit, they will draft the report, and decide on the operational status of the FIU, which in this case is St. Martin. And if the FIU is ready to be recommended for membership to the heads of the FIU. Now, we just mentioned that Aruba and Tortola as the ones that sponsored St. Martin. I would like to know when and if this site visit took place, so that now that we're stuck with a May 2nd deadline for us being recommended and being accepted into the to this illustrious body of the Edgemont Group. That's my only observation, Madam Chair, and I'd like to close again thanking the Minister for just a fine job and his staff. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Mr. Petrus Leroy Rubigal. MP Mr. Roy Marlin.
Madam Chair, the Minister wasn't too clear on the question that I asked with regard to the requirements of the F1 group. It's not the requirements of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, but the requirements of the F1 group. So we can just receive a copy of that, please. Thanks.
Excuse me. Thank you, MP Roy Marlin. MP Mr. George Van der Plet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the Minister, of course, and Castella, the head of the MAART, and other members for the answers given. Just a remark. I think it was mentioned that the casinos are the ones who have to also inform the MAART with regards to unusual transactions. I see that looking for almost the impossible, because when you look at reports, you can even Google certain information where a lot of money laundering takes place, not only via banks and so on, but also via casinos. And I do not know how much, as yet, because we don't have it as yet, how much impact or influence the casino given board, which has not yet been established, will have. But I think we got to find some means of having insight into the casino operations in order to determine whether they do at all times report any unusual transactions. Also, Madam Chair, one of the questions that I believe the Minister answered, and he mentioned something like 42,000 guilders and for the contribution and another 60,000 guilders somewhere else. I don't know exactly if I'm correct. He mentioned two amounts, 42,000 and 60,000, which amounts to 100,000 guilders. And I think that has to do with, I think, contribution and also training. Again, Madam Chair, we are on our way to becoming a country. We must comply. And I also want to agree with my colleague, Member Leroy DeVivo, and congratulating the Minister and his staff, because even though we are a small island, it does not mean that we are not subjected to the threats of when it comes to money laundering, especially. I am glad to hear if the head of the MAART was correct that so far we have not detected much with regards to terrorism and financial aspect. I hope that continues, because that would definitely not leave a good light on St. Martin. Also, let me thank, of course, the Minister too for the consistency in getting this matter resolved. Important is, though, that at the same time it is good for us to, on paper, comply with these requirements. But again, the matter is going to be the financial aspects as to where the finances are going to come from. And I think that is very important that this is done, because even right now we have what you call many budgetary constraints. Madam Chair, there's I think it's on the explanatory notes on page 2. It says, I think the third paragraaf, de Raad adviseert verder om artikel 17, tweede lid van het organisatiebesluit justitie te wijzigen, om gevolg te geven aan de onderhavige wijziging van de landsverordening, melding ongebruikelijke transacties. And it says, Madam Chair, that this is a resolution, I think it is, of the Ministry of Justice, and it has to be amended, but it doesn't have to be done prior to us being part of the Egmont Group. I need just an explanation as to what is Organisatie Besluit is all about, in order to give the people of St. Martin ideas to exactly the consequences of this particular Organisatie Besluit Justitie. Having said that, Madam Chair, I thank you.
Thank you, MP Mr. George Van der Plet. MP Mr. Jose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the Minister and his team for the responses received. Just one follow-up question with regards to the reporting. When it regards the financial institutions as well as the gaming places that we need to report, in terms of a check and balance, what is used in terms of a check and balance, whether it's via auditing, whether it's via working with the central bank, whether it is working, obviously a lot of it is voluntary in terms of based on the amount and or the frequency of the amount. So what does the MAARTEN rely on in addition to the institutions reporting? How else can they know? Or simply they may not ever know unless they have some type of auditing or some type of working along with, whether it's, as I said, the central bank, whether it's the institutions themselves, because it seems that a lot of it is voluntary, and unless there's another way to ascertain that something happened, the MAARTEN may never know. That's one thing, and then anything else we leave it to Friday. Thank you, Madam Chairlady.
Thank you, MP Mr. Joe James. MP Mr. Jon Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like also to thank the Minister in having this report now 2014 quickly and past 2014. But my question is related to the staffing. Maybe it was answered, but I didn't gather exactly when we would be full force. If the staffing, we have them readily available, the addition to the 16 or how many, there would be 9 more, 9 there would be. And are they locals? Are they from St. Martin? Even though it's, but I would want to know, but if they are locals. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Mr. Jon Leonard. MP Mr. Franz Richardson. Okay, MP Ms. Sylvia Olivachi-Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the Minister and his support staff for being here this morning and giving us an explanation in its totality in reference to the Egmont Group. And I also would like to thank Mrs. Licky Estella for the explanation about the unusual transactions, which I can understand, and I think elaborating it could go further, seeing the systems that we have on this territory that we call St. Martin. I would also like to congratulate the Minister for reaching this far, realizing the necessity of St. Martin being part of the Egmont Group. It's just that we as Parliament need to be actually a little more proactive when it comes to laws given to us as Parliament, that we can actually study them and elaborate, that we for ourselves can know more what's going on in our territory. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Mr. Sylvia Olivachi-Myers. MP Franz Richardson indicated to me while he was coming on. MP Franz Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this opportunity to follow up on the question to the Minister. I think, Minister, Madam Chair, through you, I think there was a slight misunderstanding. I think it's something seriously we need to look at, because I know that there are certain licenses that is not in operational or wanted to be in operational. Some of the banks are refusing doing business with those type of businesses. And one of them is a lottery business that wanted to open. Some of the banks refuse to do business. Some of the banks are refusing doing business, no matter who the individual may be. Because in order for you to get the license, you have to go through the proper screening, and the screening is done, but yet the institution, our banking is not allowing them people to do business with them. Some of them. Now, while there is an agreement with the MOT that these institutions do report directly to MOT is one thing. But being able now to also monitor based on them being able to bank and also have that monitoring capability for transaction also is not being allowed, is another thing. And it's an issue that the MOT itself in the future has to look at, how the role the MOT is going to play, but also government has a role to play also, and the central bank. Because if we want to be able to have a clear picture of understanding of what really is going on, then we need to be able to close all areas that gives that opportunity for businesses to be able to do business, but then proper reporting channels can be followed where procedures is concerned, where deposits is made and stuff like that. I think it makes it much more easier also for the institution to function one way or the other. That is the issue that I'm talking about, because I know of certain businesses that was not open, who has licenses, but can't operate because the bank saying those type of businesses we are not doing any business with, period. That is what it is I'm talking about. Also, not one institution who we all know, but we are not talking about that, but I know of others that who wants to open up with certain banks, and certain banks, Madam Chair, is just plain open saying no to those types of businesses of doing business. So I think it also puts the MOT in a difficult position because I don't know if, let's say, Number Games reports directly to MOT like the casinos. That also was not cleared from the Minister, Madam Chair. I thank you.
Thank you, MP, Mr. Richardson. I give the opportunity to the Minister to reply.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The site visit MP De Wever to St. Maarten took place in November 2013, and the decision in the ECMON group on the candidacy of St. Maarten will be in its meeting that will be held on from the 2nd to the 6th of June. To Madam Chair, MP Mara requested a report on the demands and conditions of the ECMON group. We will provide that report to the members of Parliament as well as the report of the ATF to the members of Parliament. Member of Parliament Bansford asks the nature of these activist that is what we call a Landbesluit HAM, a resolution, general measures. That's a lower law than the Landsverordening, and that necessary will have to be adjusted, but that necessarily have to be adjusted before the 2nd of May, simply because our Landsverordening is the effective law that goes into effect, and we will therefore meet the condition as far as the regulatory system is concerned. The contribution itself to the ECMON group is $5,000 if you're just starting contribution. But we budgeted about 48,000 guilders in view of the training and the trips and all those kind of things that have to take place to make all the exchanges possible. So that is what I was talking about when I was talking about the total amount of operational expenditures as part of the ECMON group, and not only the contribution. Of the presently 9 members of the MOT, MP Leonard, only one is of, let's say, European descent. All others have been recruited within the what you would call the Farm Netherlands until area. And what the future is concerned, actually, a recruitment drive will have to take place, and we will try to maintain this ratio if possible. But given the fact that we have to meet international standards, if that knowledge is not on the market within our own communities, we will have to look for it elsewhere until we have supply, and that is concerned. So, the issue mentioned by Member of Parliament Franz Richardson, I agree that if certain organizations cannot do business with banks, the possibility of detecting unusual transactions by those organizations, if they go for more or less clear avenues to do their business with, is not in the interest of the market. However, like I said, we have to take into consideration that the banks themselves cannot be seen as accommodating businesses that are suspect when it comes to money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities. That means that we ourselves, as a government, have to do something about the supervision of those organizations. And when it comes to lotteries and casinos and so, the institution of a gaming board is an absolute necessity. And that is what we will have to do in the very near future. When that is in place, then the banks would have in itself no reason not to accommodate those casinos and lotteries, because then they would be under the supervision of the gaming board to try and let's say put malpractices as far as this is concerned, hold it again to light and look at the organizations. The MOT is not allowed to audit, for instance, the banks. That is done by the central bank. So there's cooperation. There would be cooperation between the central bank and the MOT when it comes to that aspect. The same applies for casinos. So we have to do our homework first where it concerns the casinos, and I can tell you that proposals have reached my desk in the period that I've been here, the 6-7 months that I've been here, that I hope to put forward for decision making as soon as we've been able to review that adequately. You must also remember that we as MAARTEN are considered suspect, because we've had opportunities even during the Netherlands to put something in place, and we've not done it. And there are other countries who look at us with what they say in Dutch, een scheve oog. So from, are you accommodating this situation? Are you going to do something about it? We have to do something about it as a responsible country within the international community. And I'm not sure, Madam Chair, if MP Myers asked me a question or made observation. I'm a little bit in doubt there, but if she could clarify to me, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Minister Richardson. MP Olivachi Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just making an observation to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers.
Madam Chair, that being the case, I think I have covered all the questions asked.
Thank you, Minister Dennis Richardson, Minister of Justice. A member requested upon a clarification, which if I do that, let me see if the others want that as well, to give that level playing field. MP De Weaver, do you need any clarification at this point? Akim Gupta, MP Roy Marlin, Akim Gupta, MP Josh Pantaflet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank the Minister also for the answer that was given. The reason why I posed a question on funding, Madam Chair, because I have the document here that states Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Unit Charter. And on the Roman number 5, there's 5, funding of the Egmont Group, and it states the activities of the Egmont Group are funded by, mentions, annual contributions of its members, additional voluntary contributions from members, and voluntary contributions from other sources. And it continues to say, the Egmont Group is accountable for the management of funds, and then it says, Egmont Group member contributions are calculated according to a funding formula based on the following principles. Every member pays a contribution. There are minimum and maximum contributions. Member contributions comprise a base amount and an additional amount calculated using a progressive rate and approach. And progressive rate funding formula is based on a 75-25 ratio of GDP per capita. So this is why, actually, because I wasn't clear as to exactly what financial aspects we are talking about as becoming members of the Egmont Group. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP. Mr. George Van der Vet. Minister, would you care to add an additional?
I don't know how the formula works out exactly, but in the sense of what we have been advised, but maybe the head of the MOT could tell us, or was just told our contribution is $5,000 a year. So that would cover, I guess, the method of calculation mentioned.
Thank you, Ms. Stella, if it's necessary.
Not really. I will get all the information once they agree to let the Martin become a member. I don't have the specifications of that at this moment.
But that would be our contribution, $5,000.
Around $4,000 to $5,000 a year.
Thank you, Minister, Minister of Justice. Thank you, Ms. Lisa Stella. I see that MP Leonard also wants a clarification extra, because actually we don't have another round, but go ahead.
Yeah, MP James.
Yes, MP James, go ahead.
No, but the minister did missed my question, but it was answered in answering another question with regards to whether they could audit the banking institution and or how they would ensure that the casinos provided information. But when it relates to casino, they will be relying on the gaming board, and while they couldn't directly audit the financial institutions, they will rely on the central bank's information vis-a-vis so that they can get some of the information. I just wanted to make sure that that was my understanding, because then otherwise they are relying on the voluntary information of that individual standing in front of the customer to provide the information. So what other way they have to guarantee that they would have gotten the information? So I'm comfortable, thanks.
Thank you, MP Drew James. MP John Leonard, MP Franz Richardson, MP Cesar Ulbachimaya. Well, thank you very much, Minister, unless you want to add anything in time. You want to? Minister.
Madam Chair, we'd just like to thank the members of Parliament for making it